Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's JetBrains webinar. I'm really excited about this one because, if you're building any kind of application in the wild, you're likely going to be using a database. And you may not know that there's a lot of great database tooling inside of Writer. So I'm really excited about today's guest, Maksim Sobolevskiy, who is the DataGrip team lead. But before we bring him on, let me do a little bit of housekeeping, common questions people ask throughout the webinar. Let's start with some housekeeping. If you have any questions and you're watching us live right now on YouTube, feel free to go over to the chat. It's typically on the right-hand side of your screen. Ask questions there. I already see there's a lot of engagement there. So talk to your community members there, ask questions, and we'll try to get to them throughout this webinar. So yeah, feel free to explore the chat. One of the common questions a lot of people ask, is this video being recorded? Is this webinar being recorded? Yes, it is. And it will be made available on YouTube after the webinar is over. So if you feel you have to leave or if you have a meeting or something like that and would like to come back and watch the rest of the webinar, rest assured it's recorded. It will be on YouTube. So that housekeeping done, let's welcome our guest for today, Max. Hi, Max. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is Max, as Holly has already said. I work in DataGrip, so I'm the guest in your .NET world, but basically stuff. I hope it'll be fine.
Oh, it'll be excellent. So yeah, I'll give you the stage. I know you have a lot of cool demos, especially for our Writer users, and to kind of show them some of the DataGrip functionality. So I'll defer to you and kind of let you get started, and I'll be quiet. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So somebody's sawing the tree outside, so I hope you will not hear it, but if you will, my apologies for the street workers. So, okay, I'll share my screen. I'll share my screen. Okay. Do you see the rider?
Oh no, you still need to share your screen. You may have unshared it.
And what about what about now?
Oh yeah, we see it, so we're good.
Okay, great. So this is the very empty solution, but the right interface might be familiar for you. Just a general introduction. Why am I here? The DataGrip team lead. Why the team lead of the other product is doing the webinar for Rider? And the answer is that the database tools that JetBrains do are the same across all our products. So there is the main product called DataGrip, which is the dedicated SQL IDE from JetBrains, and nothing but databases are inside DataGrip. But we have lots of other IDEs, and Rider is one of the IDEs. And we just integrate the DB features into this IDE. So basically, everything I'm going to show you today is available not only for Rider, but for the DataGrip itself as a separate SQL tool, and for all the other IDEs you can imagine, IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, or whatever. So I will basically switch between two tools today, Rider and DataGrip itself. So this is DataGrip. It looks more or less the same, but the UI of DataGrip is specifically dedicated to work with the databases. So for example, if you don't want to have everything inside one tool, you can use DataGrip separately from Rider and manage your database here. But as well, if you want to manage all your databases inside Rider, that's also possible. So many of you who use, for example, SQL Server Management Studio along with Rider may learn something new today, and maybe you will even be able to drop the tool. But I have to say that SQL Server Management Studio is really good for administration, and the database features in DataGrip and Rider are not for administration. But on the other hand, what is really important that we support lots of databases. So this is the database tool window, the very important tool window for work with database. How you invoke it? You can just press here on database on the left pane, or you can go to View, Tool Windows, and find the database tool window here. So here is the list of the databases we support. So this list is, as you can see, is pretty long. So basically all the major and famous database vendors are supported by DataGrip and Rider. So this is the list of complete support, as we said. What means complete support? It means that we create the parser for the SQL for these particular dialects. We support the specific objects of these databases to show it in the Database Explorer. And basically, we highlight all the errors in your code. So, for example, if you are wrong with the SQL, the IDE is able to know about it and will highlight your errors. But there are a list of basic support databases, which means that these databases, they have the JDBC driver. And since the DataGrip and Rider are Java programs, they can use the JDBC driver of the database to support the database and to provide the basic support. So if JDBC driver exists and can perform queries, we can work with these databases too. So again, the list is pretty long. Everything I will show you today, I will show on the SQL Server because it's the most popular, I think, database among the .NET world. But SQLite, Postgres, Oracle are also supported, and the whole feature set is more or less the same regarding all these databases. Okay, this is the database tool window, or we call it Database Explorer sometime. I think in DataGrip it goes like this. Yes, in DataGrip we call it Database Explorer because when in DataGrip we say database tool window, it's a little bit funny because everything about database in DataGrip, right? But in Rider, this is not the main tool window, so we call it just database. So if you want to deal with the database, you go to this tool window. And here it's pretty common, I think, in all the tools, it looks more or less the same. You have your instances, your databases. And for example, here I have two instances, SQLite database and SQL Server database. I just realized that I can show you the copy-paste feature. For example, if you want to copy your database, your data source, we call it data source. If you want to copy your data source from some other tool to the other tool, from Rider to Rider, from DataGrip to Rider, or even you can copy your data source and pass it to the colleague via Messenger, it's possible. So this is my Postgres data source. I just press Command-C, and my data source is copied to the clipboard. What actually I have in my clipboard? I have this kind of XML with all the details. You can send it to your colleague via Messenger or whatever. And here I just press paste, and my data source is pasted into Rider. What I need to do, so it says that I need to switch the driver to the latest version. Okay, that's not a problem. What I need to do is to specify the password again. We don't copy the password, security. Then I press test connection. I hope everything will be good. Okay, so my Postgres data source is pasted into Rider as well. So now the introspection is happening. It means that we index all the objects of the database and use this information of indexing afterwards. This is the very important thing, and one of the basic differences between Rider or DataGrip and some other tools. We introspect the object, which means that we load all the source codes, all the metadata about these objects into our cache, and then we use this information to provide the very fast navigation, completion, or whatever. And that's why we don't show all the databases and all the schemas by the default. Lots of times people from SQL Server Management Studio, they came to when they do the migrations to our tools, they say something like, okay, I connected and everything is fine, but I cannot see all my databases. Yes, and this is intended. What you need to do, you need to go to the schemas tab of the data source properties, and just choose what databases and what schemas you want to be displayed in the Database Explorer. That has a couple of advantages. First, you don't have what you don't need. If you don't need all these databases and schemas, you just don't see it in the database tree. And moreover, and more important, that if you don't select databases and schemas here, they are not introspected, which means that they are not loaded to the ID itself, and you don't spend the ID's resources and memory and disk usages to deal with all these objects. So I work with secure database, and I only need the DBO schema, and that's why they are only selected here, and that's why I can see only them in my database tree. It's clean, and not super complicated. All right.
Mhm.
Okay. What else? What else people can do in this database explorer? They can put the data sources into folders. So, for example, I can select these two data sources, press F6, and move them into a new folder. And this folder will not SQL Server. Okay, so now I have my folder not SQL Server and another SQL Server data source here. What else? I can color my data sources. I can go to the color settings and put something like rows here. And everything which is related to this data source will be colored in red. My query editors, my database objects, like the query results, they also will be colored in red. This can come in handy when you need to distinguish your production data source from the, for example, staging or test data source. So you will be always aware in which particular context you are now. Another advice from me, if you want to not spoil your production data source, you can go to the data source properties, go here, and just tick the read-only mode. Read-only mode, pretty straightforward. If you turn on the read-only mode, you will be never able to update or insert data inside your database. And this is the mode which is we the IDE are responsible for this read-only mode. So it's not database responsible. We are responsible. So for example, we build the dependencies of the functions. So for example, if the function calls the function, calls the function, calls the function, which updates the data, we will warn you about that. So for example, let's leave it open, the read only. And if I just type something like inserts, whatever, it doesn't matter. So the IDE highlights that this statement will lead to the modification on data, and it's not possible to run it as well. But if, oh, let's emulate some insert statements, something like this. Now, if I run it, it will warn me again, but the IDE will offer me to execute it. And if you want to execute it on the read-only mode, it's possible. But I don't advise you to do that. So let's go to the options again, turn it off. Let's turn off the coloring because I don't want everything to be red as well. Let's start with the query console. So the query console is the temporary SQL editor where you write your queries. There are two main entities in the database stuff here: console files and like the physical files. So it's possible to work with general files from your local computer, from your solution or whatever. But generally when people write queries, they just do it on a temporary basis. So basically, when you want just to write some SQL, you go here, new query console, or you use the shortcut, and there is your temporary SQL editor. You of course can save it afterwards, but it's not the scenario you're supposed to work with. And by the way, what's the difference between DataGrip Provider and SQL Management Studio? You don't need to think about saving your scripts every time you work with it. So for example, I create the simple query, I got the result, I close it, and nothing happened. So okay, I close this again, nothing happened, no more questions. But if you want to restore your temporary scripts, you shouldn't be worried because everything is saved automatically. You just press Command E, recent files, and recall your console. You press Enter, and here's my console. So everything is saved. So don't worry, you will never lose your queries. Okay, I spoiled my plot a little bit. I didn't want to say about recent files now, but I just improvise. So this is the query console. What we encourage people to do when they try creating queries in Rider, we encourage people to use live templates. Live templates are the code snippets which represent the repetitive stuff, the repetitive queries. So some of them are pre-built in the IDE, but you can also create your own ones. Let's start with the simplest and the most important live template of the database stuff, select. To invoke this template, you can type SEL, press tab, choose the table, and you are done. So pretty simple and pretty fast. If you press Command J, you can see the list of all the templates. So for example, the ints template can be invoked by Enter. So you can either invoke them by Command J, or you can just type the abbreviation. So if you type int, you press tab, then you need to choose the table, then the code completion will fill all the columns, and here you put the values, and the parameter hint will even tell you which particular columns you are using now. So this is about live templates. You can create your own templates, and these templates can be really, really huge. If, for example, you want to save the query and you run the same query day by day, you also can create a template from that. So let's take a look at live templates. Okay, lots of C# templates. So those of you who use Writer maybe know about templates, but let's go to the SQL templates because we're talking about SQL. Okay, these are templates, and you can create your own ones, and you can manage these templates as well. So, for example, let's go to the SEL template, and this is the end variable, and it means that the cursor will be placed here after you invoke the template. If I press Command X and I press it here, what I get, I choose the table, and the cursor is near the wildcard. And why it can be handy? It can be handy because the wildcard is not the best practice, as you know. And the writer offers you to deal with this. You can just press Alt-Enter and press Expand Column List, and you will get all the columns. Alt-Enter. I think many of you know the shortcut, but if you are just a beginner in Writer, you need to remember it again. Alt-Enter is the most important shortcut, maybe the second most important shortcut, but one of the most important shortcuts, okay? In the IDE, Alt-Enter is the shortcut which helps you to improve the code. It's not always about the mistakes or errors, it's just about the making it better. So in this particular case, my query, of course, working, but the wildcard is not the best practice. Alt-Enter, expand columns, and I'm here. And this expand columns action is even more smart than you can think about. Let's add a couple of joins. By the way, you can notice that the join completion analyzes the foreign keys of the database and can provide the completion for the whole join clause. So I press enter and I got the whole join clause for the film actor table. It happens because there is the foreign keys between actor and the film actor tables, and that's why we provide the code completion. If I can add a couple of more joins. For example, join, I need the film category. So this is the film category, okay, and now I can join the film. Join film, okay, and that's it. So I have my query, it works, great. I wanted to mention the expand wildcard feature. In this particular case, this feature will actually know about all the joins you have, and that's why we get all the columns from the from clause and from the join clause. And you can even notice that in case of conflicts, the columns are qualified with the aliases. So the join completion provided the automatic aliases for me, and I'm fine with these aliases. I can turn them off, but I like them. And as you can see, in these cases, the columns are qualified with the aliases because there are the conflicts. If I delete the qualification, the IDE immediately understand that, okay, this is the conflict. You have the several last updates feature or last updates columns in your queries. The IDE doesn't need to run this query, okay? And you don't need to run this query. And you already can see that something is not okay here. Ambiguous column reference. What you can do, you can press Alt-Enter, our best shortcut, press Qualify Identifier. You will be offered several tables or aliases. You can choose one, and that's it. And we have no more conflicts. If you want to qualify just everything, it's also possible. You can do it like with the multi-selection. So you can select several columns, press Alt-Enter, qualify, and they all are qualified with the needed alias. Okay, what else? If you don't like the F alias, you can press Shift F6. Many of you know this shortcut, rename. You can type something like blah, 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 whatever, and this will replace or actually rename all the aliases inside your query. And it's not about text search, it's about resolving. So for example, if I do something like this, something like this, and I will rename these F alias. Those F alias will not be touched. On my first webinar on this topic, this F alias was also renamed after this operation. This was a huge bug, but we fixed it, and now everything is fine. Okay, so let's go further with my flow. Do it, we'll column this a little bit less. What else? Code completion. I'm pretty sure that you know that code completion is one of the best writers feature, and in database we also love code completion. It is really fast just because, as I said in the previous chapter, that we introspect all the database. So all the information of the database objects are already stored in the IDE. So that's why we don't need to query your database to provide the code completion. Even if you are on the plane, you can write queries with the code completion. You cannot run them, of course, but you can write them. So, for example, let's create another query. I don't like this caret going to the wildcard, by the way. So let's bring it back. Live templates. Where are my live templates? Yes, other languages. So, okay, I got it. Okay, so let's create another query. Abbreviations. I like abbreviations very much. So, for example, if you want to query film actor, you can start typing film. But we have a lot of film stuff, right, in our database. So if you want to use the film actor table, what I advise is to use FA, abbreviations. It works. So you don't need to type the whole thing. And by the way, I forgot to tell, this abbreviation thing also works for the search in the Database Explorer. So for example, if you want to highlight the film actor table, you can type FA just here, and the film actor table will be highlighted. So any kind of abbreviations you can imagine work. So for example, FIAC also goes for film actor. FCA goes for film category. So abbreviations are really powerful. Okay, so I want to query my actor. So AI goes for actor ID, really handy, something like this. OB goes for order by, AI goes for actor ID. That's it. My query is done. When you have several queries, what you need to do, what you don't need to do, is to select them. So basically, and as far as I remember, SQL Server Management Studio, it happens like this. When you run your queries, you need to first select the query and then press run. In Writer, it also works, but it's not necessary. If you have several queries, you can just put the caret to the query, press Command Enter, and the smart chooser will actually ask you if you want to run this particular query or maybe two queries, and you have the whole script. In my particular case, I want to run just this query, and that works. If you have the subquery, this chooser also knows about that. Let's create the subquery. Alt Enter again helps me here. I can convert my query to subquery. Alias, okay, I'm done. What's that? The writer is really smart. It understands that order by cannot happen in the subquery, okay? And if you have the subquery, the chooser will offer you just to run the subquery for debugging your big query, or run the whole query, or run the whole script. I personally like the chooser appear only in particular cases. And what I actually do when I work with database stuff, I go to customize, and I say, okay, this is the first execute action. Please, when inside that statement, execute the smallest statement. No questions at all. But this is the execute to action. For example, I can assign another shortcut for my execute to. Add keyboard shortcut. I do it for the first time with the writer, so I don't know what shortcuts are already busy. Okay, this is the free shortcut. Command Shift Enter. Okay, this is my execute to action, and this execute to action. Where it was. Database stuff. I lost my database query execution. Okay, this is execute to when inside the statement asks what to execute. Okay, so now my execute action, default one, will ask nothing, but the second one will ask what to execute. And now, if I press Command Enter, this statement is executed. And if I press Shift Control Enter, I have the chooser appear. So that's just the flow I like, but you can customize it in any way you like. If you run two queries, you got two results. What you can do with this result? You can type something query 1 in the command here, and result number 2 here. And after that, when you run queries, these comments go to the name of the tab. So if you have several queries, you can actually name all the queries, and these names will be displayed in the tab of the results. Okay, let's go next. Here I will use something like distinct to show you what I'm going to show. Something like this. If you have several results, sometimes you need to compare them, and we natively provide this feature. So for example, this is the query 1 result. If you want to compare query 1 to result 2, you can go here, a small tiny button called compare with, and you can compare your query 1 with result 2. And you can compare, and you can actually detect which particular rows are mutual between two result sets and which rows are not mutual. So that helps you compare data. Another flow which I use when I want to compare two results is the following one. So let's copy this query. And create a new console. And it says that current database is not introspected because we have the master in chooser, but I want to use Sequela. So this query works. We have the mode called in-editor results. If you turn this mode, you will get the results just inside the console under your query. And this is kind of a notebook mode. You can turn the services tab off. Here you can do the same. And if you will just drag and drop your tab to some part of the screen like this, you will see that there are queries and there are results just under these queries, and you can compare visually what you get under these queries. So this is another flow possible for comparing, and especially if you run scripts and you want to get the results just here, it is also possible to use this. Okay, let's turn this mode off. Code completion, navigation. Again, maybe you know lots about navigation in Rider, where you can go to some declaration of the variable from the usage of the variable, when you can go to the declaration of the class from the instances of the class, and the same concepts, they work in databases. So for example, actor, table. If I command click here, I go to the DDL immediately. And if I go to the data here, I can see the data of the table. Also, I can press Alt F1, which is the select in, and I can choose the select in database. So the actor table will be actually selected in the database explorer. Navigation. Yeah, and this is about navigation from the code. There is also navigation from out of the blue. So for example, if I go to the search and go to symbols and I type actor here, I can just be navigated to the DDL of the table and to the data of the table as well. Okay, let's go back to our data editor. The data editor is pretty straightforward, where you can edit or view the data of your tables. So I navigate to the actor table, open the data, and this is my data editor. Let's briefly take a look on what it can do. Ordering, more or less straightforward. If you click on the column, you get the order. The default order uses the order by clause. What it means that we actually regenerate the query and run this query, and you see the updated results. But you can use the client sorting if you don't want to run queries. I think it can be done here. Yes, if you turn off sort via order by, you can just click and we perform the ordering on the client side. What is the main difference? Of course, the main difference is when you perform the ordering on the client side, we only use the number of rows which are on the client. In my particular 100 rows. If you use the sort via order by, we run the new query, so the whole table is affected. This is, by the way, the page size, so you can use 100, or you can use only 10, or you can use all rows, or you can use the custom. It doesn't matter. Of course, it is really important because the bigger the page, the more memory we need to retrieve the data, and also there are lots of things which this feature affects. The first one is ordering, and the second one, for example, is export. If you just command A to select all the data, you just copy, and of course only 200 rows are copied to paste into some other place, but let's take a look on this a little bit later. Okay, what else? You can edit data actually here. The first impression can be that not many people edit data just inside the database, but in fact, we have lots of feature requests and bug reports. So in real life, people do edit data just here. Although that's just true. So what you can do just put some new values here. You can do even some multi-editing. This is kind of small Excel. You can just copy the data from here and paste it here, and that's also possible. You can edit rows, you can add rows, you can do many manipulations. And as you can see, my changes are now highlighted. What it means that they are local. They are not in your database. You can see the preview of the DML. So this is the statements which will run when you press the submit button. And you can just submit them immediately. I think now it will not work because of it's not possible to delete this row because of the constraint. Let's check it. Yes, that's true. So I can go here, revert this change. By the way, any local changes can be reverted. So for example, I can select these changes and revert only them. Okay, so let's update this. I press submit, and now my data is in my database. So you cannot cancel this change anymore.
Yeah, that's very
what
cool.
Else?
Yeah.
Navigation. Go to referencing rows will bring you to the relation table, film actor. It also can be forwarded by Command B. Command B is the navigation shortcut for the code, but it works in data. So, for example, here, Mostel, I press Command B. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't work here. Maybe that's a bug. Okay, let's use the context menu. Go to referencing rows. This is another shortcut in Rider. Option F7. Okay, let's try it. Option F7. Okay, I have the film actor table with the filter actor ID number 7. So we know that actor number 7, I forget the name, Mostel. Okay, this is the result of my change, Mostel. Okay, so the Mostel plays in several films, in 30 films. And if you want to know more about the film 170, you can press Alt F7. Now I need reference rows because they reference this. Okay, Command B works here, and I understand that the film 107 is common darling or whatever, and I can go vice versa. So I can go here, go to referencing rows. I see that in this film there were 8 of actors. I can know more about 121. I press Command B, and this is Lisa Bergman. And now I understand that Lisa Bergman and Mostel took part in the same film. So this is about navigation by foreign keys. What else? Let's go. Here is a filtering. So you can type anywhere close just here. So for example, last name like whatever, and you can filter rows here. And there is also a client-side filtering, which is really important. And that's why this page size is really important. So, for example, I can just press Command F. This is text search, and I do something like this. Tom. Okay, Tom. And the data will be highlighted. I can even filter the rows with the needed values. And this text search, it goes through all the data which are on the client side. It's not about database, so you cannot write the query to search for data. But what is really important to remember that it searches only through the rows which are displayed. If I go here and press all, and then I press Tom, of course I will have a little bit more data with the Tomai, Francais Tomai, because I have more rows here. So this is the client search, and I personally really love it because I don't want to write queries to quickly find some data. So for me, the text search is super fine, especially if you don't know in what particular column you have the data in. Oh, that's really cool. And order by, I already showed it. This is you can type any column here. You can just type several columns here, last update, and the ordering will be formed. Toolbar. What we have the page size. Okay, refresh, add row, delete row, pretty common. Revert, preview, submit. Already mentioned it. Transaction mode. I usually use automatic transaction mode, but you can use the manual transaction mode, which actually means that after you will have some change, you will submit this change. In this particular stage, they can be undone, because in manual transaction mode you need to commit the transaction. This is the database part. Okay, so we need to press the commit, and the transaction will be committed. So let's actually check it. When I press, so this is the log. In services we have the log of every change, and if I press commit, the log says the transaction committed. But before I pressed commit, I could roll it back. This is the DDL button. We can navigate to DDL and back. This is one of the most important drop-down of the DataGrip, I suppose. This is the list of data extractors. Data extractors are just a list of the formats in which you can export your data to. So let's choose SQL inserts. What does it mean? You can select any piece of data, press Command-C, and they are copied in your clipboard. What do I have in my clipboard? I have the batch of insert statements. If I choose the SQL updates and press Command-C, in my clipboard, I have the batch of update statements representing that particular data. Of course, you can not only copy and paste your data, you can export your data into files. So if I press export data, I can choose the extractor, I can choose the output file, the preview, and I got it. By the way, we can export to Excel as well. We cannot copy into the clipboard in the Excel format, of course, because it's binary, but we can export the data into Excel format. But all the other formats are text formats. It means that you can copy your data into these formats as well, not only creating files. I personally like pretty format. I just copy my data, and if I want to send some data to my marketing or to my account manager or whatever, I copy it in a pretty format, and what I get there, I get just the text format of my data, so it can be easily sent to any place. You can also use these formats. Oh, by the way, yeah, very important thing, that these formats are scripts. So if you want to create your own format, it's also possible. So for example, OneRow, Pretty, Markdown, this is a kind of a new formats we created a couple of years ago, because there was a request from our users. If you want to create your own format, it's possible. You can go to scripts directory and see that these extractors are just Groovy scripts. So for example, Pretty Groovy. So you can go here if you know Groovy, or it shouldn't be really complicated because it's just a small scripts. You can create your own formats and use these formats and copy in this format and paste in this format. That's possible. For what else you can use this format? You can use this format just to display your data. If you go here to the eye icon, you press text, it means that your data will be displayed in this particular format. JSON, okay, my data is displayed in JSON. HTML, my data is displayed in HTML. So basically any grid you can get in Rider, whether it's a CSV file or SQL Server table or SQLite view or whatever, can be represented in many ways. Okay, so I will choose the table again. Let's go further. Export data, already mentioned. Copy to database. Yeah, that's a really cool feature. I like it very much. Let's go back to my query console. By the way, this is the good place to tell you about the local history. Maybe you remember that I said that everything is saved, so you don't need to worry about if I save this file or not, and you can go and see all the revisions of any file. So Query Console also has local history. I can go to local history and see all the changes. So every time you type, we actually save it. And recently we introduced the search in local history. So for example, if I want to write some query from Act or whatever, I can find this. And this is the query I need. I go to here, and for example, this is my revision. And I say, okay, restore this revision. Revert. That's it. I'm here. So what I wanted to show, this is my more or less complicated query, right? Sometimes a query can run for 1 hour or for 2 hours, and then you need to manipulate the result. And to make it easier, you can materialize the result with no worries. So I have this result. I can go here and press copy to database. If I choose my target schema, SQL Server DBO, and my result, wherever, I press import. and my result is here. So now, no data. What happened? Let's check it a little bit. Copy to database. Okay, SQL Server DBO. My result with data. Okay, everything should be fine. I suppose I press import. Okay, there were some errors. Let's kind of specify. Okay, I have no data, but I have another idea. Something went wrong with the conversion, but I can copy it to Postgres. I like Postgres more. It has no bugs at all. So I press copy to database, and I choose the Postgres. And my result from SQL Server with data for sure. Import. Yes, I got it. So let's go to my Postgres data source. Guest tables. My result tables. Where's my okay? Yeah, I got it. Okay, so Postgres.
Awesome.
Viva la Postgres. Yeah, so I have the Postgres table generated from the result from my SQL Server table, and it's possible to copy results and tables from one database to another. And we even recently introduced the possibility to copy several tables. I don't know if it's present in this version of Rider. Let's check it. Yes. So I select several Postgres tables, press F5, and it's possible to copy all these tables to some other place. Let's copy it to SQLite. Import. I think we have the success. Tables. And yeah, all this _1 tables are just copied from my Postgres databases. Okay, so this was about copying table. Let's go back to my actor table. Again, as you can, it's already it's yet importing. Recent files is my favorite feature. If I want to go back and open any tab, I use recent files. So Command E, actor table. This is my actor table, and we are exploring the toolbar. Okay, copy to database already mentioned, compare already mentioned, view options already mentioned, and a couple of options not super interesting here. Okay, what I like, transpose. Yeah, you can transpose your data. It can be especially useful if you have one row with lots of columns, and when you transpose, it's just more convenient to show to look for the data. And one last feature about the data grid I wanted to show you. Let's go to my query console. So where you have lots of columns, this is the pretty common situation, right? You have the query and it has lots of columns, and you want to search for data for some particular column. Command F12, the feature called column list. And here it's really easy to find the particular column. So if I want to find a column called description, I just start typing, I press enter, and I'm here in my description column. You can even hide columns here. Oh, it doesn't work. So generally you need to press space to hide the column, but it doesn't work here. Let's go to DataGrip, and I show it in DataGrip as well. It's the light color scheme to distinguish DataGrip. Okay, let's create the query console. Let's create the same query. Joins. As you remember, making joins is a pleasure in DataGrip. Join film category. Okay, that's it. I run the query. Nope. Yes, I have lots of columns. I press Command F12. And here, what I wanted to show, that I can press space. And it doesn't work here as well. Okay, but you need to know that space should hide and show columns here, but it doesn't work in the current version. Okay, let's go further. It was the data editor, navigation. I already told you about the navigation. Some features about which help you not to lose your work. Local history, I already showed it. Or there is also the query history, where all the queries you actually execute are saved in the query history, so you can paste any query to the query console. There is also the clipboard history. Everything you copy is actually stored in the clipboard of Rider and of DataGrip as well. If you press Shift Command V, every clipboard revision is here. So there was, for example, this is the query I copied a couple of hours ago, which created a linked server. And this is the specific SQL Server feature I wanted to show you. If you have the linked server, we cannot introspect the linked server because the SQL Server doesn't provide the ability to do that. So there is absolutely no way to show the objects on the linked server here. But we created a feature which is called map linking server. So if so, I created this linked server which is linked to the same server just to make it pretty easy. What you can do, you can go here to my server, linked data sources, map to, and map your linked server to some instance, and I just mapped it to myself. And it makes it possible to have the code completion for the object. So for example, I can type my server dot, and I can see all the databases from this particular server, from my server, Tequila, DBO, Acta, whatever. So if you want to have all the coding completion and coding assistance features for the linked servers, you can do just this type of mapping, and that's it. So I think maybe that's all for now. I'm pretty sure that I forgot about many things, but let's ask for the help of our friends and answer their questions.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've learned a couple things here. So it's like being able to compare two tables or two query results together. That's amazing. But one of the first questions.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forgot one thing that because I was prepared with this. I want to open the small project I have. The language injections. Yeah, some people, they do have the SQL strings inside their programs. And it's possible in Rider to run and to manage the SQL just inside the string. So for example, here I have the very simple query runner, and the SQL strings are highlighted in proper way because the Rider understands that it is the SQL. If it doesn't understand, it's also possible to inject it. So let me make some stupid thing, something like this. So if you have the string, you can just go here and say inject language or reference. Oh yeah, by the way, find action. I forgot about find action. I hope that everybody knows about that, but if somebody doesn't know, this is the most important shortcut. Alt Enter is a second important shortcut. This is the most important shortcut. Shift Command A. You can invoke any action from any place. You don't need to remember the menu item, the UI place, whatever. You press Shift Command A, and I need to inject language or reference. I inject language or reference. I'm sorry, this is the menu. I need the action. Inject language or reference. And I can say to the writer, okay, this is the SQL Server language in my string. I choose SQL Server, and now it's properly highlighted. And what I can even do, I can even run this SQL. I press Command Enter, and what I have one here. So again, every time you have the SQL, and this SQL is the full one, so we can parse it and we can understand this is the full SQL, you can navigate from here. So to-dos table, I can even navigate to the to-dos table and navigate to the data of the table. I can have the code completion when I write code completion, and I can run the SQL. So if I press Command Enter, I'm sorry, I got the data. And already I saw the parameterized SQL somewhere here, something like this. So if you have the variables inside your SQL, when you run it from the code, you can put the parameters instead of variables. So for example, I don't know, whatever. I don't know if the syntax is correct or not. Execute. Okay, so something was wrong with the syntax, but anyway, you need to know that if you have the variables inside the C# classes, it's possible to run the parameterized queries. So yeah, that's it for today. Please questions.
Yeah, just to add, like if you're a .NET developer and using like a micro ORM style library like Dapper, or you're just using raw ADO.NET, yeah, it's you just select your SQL syntax. So in the case Max was showing, he was using SQLite. And in the latest EAP, I noticed SQLite syntax is even better. It supports like the returning keyword and things like that. So there's a lot of improvements even in the next version of Rider that are coming out. It really is fun, and it's a great way to kind of build apps too. So it's like that back and forth between is awesome. But let's get to some user questions. One of the first questions is, will riders support things like DAC and BAC? Like I guess those are like the backup packs, right? Can you restore a database using some of those backup formats? I guess is the question.
We don't support native backup formats for SQL Server yet because it's quite complicated to support the native backup tool. So basically, we consider it as a more part of administration than developing. So for now, there are no plans to support these kind of things. So for job managing, for server monitoring, for backups, we advise still to use the SQL Server Management Studio.
Oh, my apologies. I guess the BAC, I'm not familiar with it, but there are users saying it's not a backup. It's part of the SSDT engine. I'm not familiar with what that is. So,
okay. So a couple of words about SSDT. We are now working on the same flow for the DataGrip in Writer, where you will be able to store your files, which describes your schema under the version control, and do the migration in both sides from the DDL files to the database and from database files to the DDL. So we are now working on the same flow, which will help you to manage your databases through the files and store them in the Git or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully that answers that particular question. Yeah, I'm not. If folks don't realize, I'm more of a developer than a database administrator. So if I get anything wrong, please correct me. I won't take it as an insult. I promise. Also, somebody asked, are there ways to compare schema and create migration scripts? I know you were guessing someone was going to ask that question, and they obviously did. So, yeah.
Yeah, there is a way to compare schemas and get the migration scripts. So let's check if I have some example. So Sakila, okay, this is this empty Sakila schema. Let's populate it with the similar tables. So if I do something like this, press copy. Sakila, I will copy some tables, import. I hope it will work. Okay, so now I have two Postgres schemas, public with lots of objects, and Sakila only with tables, which might be a little bit different because they're exported from some other database. I can select these two. Oh, the import is continuing, so let's wait a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. The migration is actually happening like from the database tool client. So yeah, I guess it's pulling all the data down and then also then executing a secondary process to kind of reinsert it into the different source, right?
Yeah. So what I can do, I have two schemas. I can select them and go to the compare feature. And there is the diff viewer. We are now working on it heavily. And this viewer will actually show you the difference of the objects. So basically green means that these objects needs to be created. But tables, they have some kind of differences. So for example, here, like city, we show for each object, we show the object property div and the DDL div. So in my particular case, there are lots of differences in the DDLs. And we generate the script, which will do the migration. And the same mechanism will actually work with the actual schema and DDL files. I have to say that it's not production ready now. There are lots of tiny things in the migration and lots of tiny things in the generation of the objects. And we need to carefully think about each particular property of each particular objects. And especially in different vendors, there are lots of differences. And we are now heavily work on this diff window. So we'll really appreciate if somebody will try this migration window, share the feedback with us, but because there are lots of cases and each particular case needs care. So yeah, the short answer is yes, we have the schema migration and we are now heavily working on this.
Yeah, that looks like an awesome feature. Just from my past experience building production applications, like maybe a migration goes wrong or someone goes in and manually makes a change and it's causing some issues and you're not really sure what the change is because the schema grows so big. Just having tools like this at your disposal that you can use, it's pretty amazing. So yeah, thanks. I would have loved to know that these tools existed 5 or 6 years ago. Would have would have saved me a lot of time. So yeah, a lot of folks are asking about execution plans, right? So if you're writing a lot of SQL queries, maybe they're not as performant as you'd like them to be. What kind of tools does DataGrip give you in terms of looking at execution plans?
There is a tool with the database itself, the SQL Server, for example, gives you the execution plan, and we just visualize it. So let's create some, again, this, the query IFC film category or whatever, something like this. I think that something is happening here, so we will have the execution plan. Ambiguous, okay. Qualify with AFC. Okay, I got it. So if you want to see the execution plan, you can go to explain plan and see the explain plan. The default view is the tree view, where you can see the identity view, but you can switch to the diagram mode, which will help you to see. Oh, how can I zoom it? Yeah, okay. So let's leave it only this. In diagram mode, you will see, it may be the more familiar way for those who use it, this the explain plan in the SQL Server Management Studio. So that's the two ways of how you can see the explain plan.
Yeah, this is awesome. Like just sometimes the developers were kind of in a rush to write queries just to kind of get a feature out the door. But just being able to go back, run the execution plan right from inside Writer, and then maybe do some performance tuning and talk to team members and DBAs in terms of how to improve performance. Just having all these tools in DataGrip and Writer, it's just awesome. So again, it's really great. Like that's most of what folks are saying in the chat right now. They're just like, whoa, I didn't know this existed, or wow, it's amazing that I learned this today. So mostly positive stuff in here, and yeah, I hope people are learning something new from this webinar. So I did see something, but I don't know if you have the data in the database, but I did see we have a GeoViewer presentation thing, right? So if you have geodata, you can map it or something like that.
I don't have the geodata currently. I can just show you where you can see. So this is the panel, which will show you the map and the particular area of the map which are coded into your data here. I don't have the geodata currently, so I cannot show it. But again, if you want to see your geodata, use the GeoViewer or just from this particular place.
Yeah, I might actually play around with that later just to get some screenshots. And I know a lot of people now are doing a lot of geo-based data. Like just having that visualization tool right in your editor makes things easier to debug and to kind of visualize. So very cool stuff. So so here's a question. How can I view stored procedures? What's kind of the stored procedure support like?
Okay, so you have the stored procedures in your database tree. So for example, here I have a couple of them. Though this is the function, but it's more or less the same. We offer quite unusual flow to work with them. When you need to do some update for your stored procedure, you don't need to rewrite the create to alter or to create or replace in some other dialects. For example, I have the function fill not in stock. And if I want to make some change, okay, let's go to inventory in stock, because it's a bit more complicated. If I want to have the change, so for example, here I can do something like this. This is super logical change, but it doesn't matter. You just open the source code, make the change, and then you press the submit button. And the DataGrip actually generates the code for you, which will update the function. So in our case, it uses the alter function. I press just OK, and the function is updated, and that's it. So you don't need to rewrite anything. You can just do something like this. You can even do several changes. Like for example, I do this change, and let's do some other change in some other procedure or function, something like this, for example. And then there is the tool window called database changes. Yes, this is here. And in database changes, you can observe all the local changes which are currently not submitted. Yes. So I can see that in this particular sort procedure, there is this change, and this particular sort procedure, there is another change. And I can submit all of them in once, and I can press submit, and there will be the code generated to update both functions. If I press OK, these functions are updated. So that's how it works. Also, the stored procedures, source codes are stored locally, as far as I mentioned in the beginning of my webinar, that we load all the sources and then use them for the navigation, for search, and whatever. And that's why you can just easily search inside the store, inside the code of the stored procedures. So, for example, if I go to the double shift and the text tab, where you can just search for text, I can do something like from actor, something like this. And no, it is found in consoles. Let's see which particular text I can find. From inventory. Okay, so this is the text I want to find. I go here, I go to the text, and I type from inventory, and I see that my from inventory text is used in the film not in stock, film in stock, and inventory in stock functions, and I can navigate easily to each piece of this function. So again, you can search inside the source codes of your procedures, functions, and whatever, because we load them and we provide this feature because of that.
Wow, that's kind of the amazing thing I realized after using DataGrip on our database tools is like that introspection of the database is like such a huge boost to productivity, because it's like having your own private DBA kind of helping you, write queries, figure out where things are. It's just awesome. So yeah.
There is there is one important thing, that introspection is the process which takes resources.
Mhm.
And sometimes if your database is really big, it can take lots of time, and there are a couple of things to know about that. The first
Mhm.
thing which you can do, you can go here to the data source properties options and turn off auto sync. So the introspection will not be run automatically. It will be run only when you require it with the help of the refresh button. You can also choose what kind of source codes to load. One source codes a row, all source codes excluding system schemas, because the source codes there are more or less the same. You don't need to actually change them, or
Mhm.
for all schemas. But the major improvement here will be introducing introspection levels. We already introduced it for Oracle database, where you can first introspect the main information, like the object names or whatever, and then you can introspect a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And we are now currently working for the same feature for SQL Server. So for those who have big databases, they will be able to introspect only the basic information, and only when they need all the information, like source codes, they will be able to choose the level, and it will make the whole process more flexible.
Mhm. Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I've seen some really big databases, so I imagine folks will really appreciate just being able to fine tune what gets introspected. So, yeah, I think that's all the questions that I've been able to find. Yeah, if anybody has any other questions, like please ask them now. If not, we could probably start wrapping up. So, but Max, this has been really, really awesome. Like, the thing about all of our tools is like there's just so many features, some big, some small, but they all come together to kind of create like a really nice experience. And it's like data grip is probably no exception. It's just like you can slowly discover all these things either through using Alt Enter or the Search Everywhere feature. I think like if folks are starting to get starting to use DataGrip or the database tools, yeah, use the Search Everywhere feature. Type a question in there or type a keyword, and you'll likely find what you're looking for. So, Yeah, I'm not really seeing. Oh, I guess one more person asked a question. Is there XML or var binary field support? So I guess if you have one of those complex columns, what would that look like when you get the results back?
We do have the support. I don't have the example, but I just want to show where one needs to find them. So let's go to some table, whatever. So let's do some simple stuff. We go to the modified table and add the column. And I don't remember if the SQL Server has some XML type column. Yeah, okay. So XML type. Now I have this XML column here. So when you input or work with values, what you can do, you can go to maximize, and the maximize action will actually show you the panel where you will see the full, like, whatever values. And it's also possible to reformat the code here to work like with a snippet. So every time you have the big value in some fun value, just use the maximize feature, and I think it will help you. This panel actually can do two things: show you the value or count the aggregates. It's our recent features. So for example, if I select several IDs, I immediately got aggregates count here. So I have the average, I have the count, I have the max value, I have the median value, mean value, whatever. And you can even create your own aggregates. You can go to scripts directory. And again, this is scripts. Aggregators are just Groovy scripts. So if you want to have some cunning algorithm how you want to count the aggregates of the fields, it's possible to make it custom.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my follow-up question to the aggregators and the extractors is like, is that something you can push into source control as part of the project? So
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, of course. Yeah, you can share it inside your team. That's of course possible.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I think we're 10 minutes over. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, on our social media, ask questions there. I'm sure me or Max or any one of JetBrains employees can help answer those questions there. But other than that, Max, thank you so much. Let's wrap up now. So I'll share my slide here. So maybe, yep, there we go. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today. If you want more information about Rider and DataGrip, be sure to go to jetbrains.com. Some of the URLs to get you there directly are /Rider, /DataGrip. If you want to read more about our .NET articles, just go to blog.jetbrains.com /.NET. Do me a favor, follow us on social media at our official Twitter accounts. If you like this webinar and you want to see more of these webinars, be sure to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the channel itself. Be sure to like the video if you want to see more content like this. And be sure to follow Max at his Twitter account. I'm not even going to pretend to try to pronounce that. Max, if you want to try to pronounce your Twitter name, go ahead.
No, just MOSCASPOS.
Yeah, if you folks want to send us your pronunciation attempts at his Twitter handle, feel free to. And again, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps us and helps us get more webinars like this. So as a final thank you, Max, thank you for what you do and the great product that is DataGrip and the database tools and all of our IDEs. I'm sure everybody thanks you for the quality product that you put out. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you for being an amazing host. Bye.
Thank you.